Welcome, welcome. We have a special guest with us. Mamta Suri is the Director of Engineering at DocuSign. She is also a proud mother of two and a lifelong learner. And she's going to share a couple of tips on how to control your anxiety and how she's done it as someone who is shy, but who does presentations, who speaks up and has learned how to manage all of this herself and do so as well in a strong and kind way. So I can't wait to speak to you, Mamta. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm really happy to be here and really excited to speak to you and to the audience and share what I have learned in my journey. And hopefully it helps others as well.
Thank you for that. Let's start with the shyness part because a lot of people, me included, had a hard time with shyness. When we're shy, it becomes quite difficult even to speak up. Even more, it's already difficult. It becomes even more difficult when we are shy, especially in the workplace environment.
Mhm.
So, how is that for you?
Yeah, so I'm not only just introverted, I was a very shy kid. And I had part of the reason is I had immigrated from India in high school. So in high school, when teenagers already go through a lot of changing emotions and growing up and learning to do things, I also had a big cultural change. So I had to cope up with it very quickly, but then I also just got into my shell even more. So when I had questions for my teachers, I would not raise my hand in class. I would stay back after class and ask them questions, or I'll ask them for additional time if I needed help. I did not feel comfortable at all speaking up in any of my classes. And then after that, when I went to college to UC Santa Cruz, it continued. Although I was a really good student, I was getting all A's, but I would hardly speak up in class. Again, I would wait for the class to be over, or I would email the professor afterwards, or I would go to the office hours. But it wasn't till I actually started working that I noticed that when I speak up and when I don't, and as a woman, also there's that imposter syndrome that happens to us in at workplace as well. My first job out of college was for a medical instruments company, and I got the opportunity to work with really smart people. They were PhDs in chemistry and physics, and this kind of fit my background because I had actually ended up double majoring in computer science and biology. So I wanted to combine the both. So I was really excited. But as soon as I got there, I realized how much I don't know. But I was really lucky because although those were really smart people, they were also very nice and kind. And they wanted to make me successful. I know a lot of time if we don't get that environment, but I was lucky enough to get that. And that's what made me realize they actually valued my opinion. So when would be in a meeting and they would pause and say, "What do you think?" And a lot of times I would say, "Oh my God, like my opinion actually does matter." So that kind of gave me the first confidence boost. And then I started my master's at Carnegie Mellon while working, and there were a lot of presentations that we had to do. So I just started observing other people on what things they were doing well and how I would always if we were presenting as a team, I would let others speak and do all of when we divide up the work, do the other work so that I don't have to speak up in presentations. But then I saw that I had to overcome that. So I made it one of my personal goals that I was going to improve myself, and I was actually going to speak in conferences and speak up in meetings and speak up wherever it's needed. Then I just started to challenge myself. So one of the first things I started doing was when we had a presentation for my master's program, I would practice in front of the mirror aloud a few times and just being comfortable with myself, presenting and hearing myself. So I started doing that. I started getting better at it. And then I started speaking up in the small women in tech groups at work. and started speaking up. So slowly by slowly, I started building up my confidence. And then I got to a point where I was speaking in front of 300 people in some of very big conferences. And now when I have to present at work or even in conferences, it's not something like I have to think about it twice. Of course, I still have to prepare. I still record myself when there is an important presentation I have to give, so I can see myself back to see how I can improve. That was one of the things that just kept challenging myself. And another thing is that I used to love dancing, but I was always, again, very shy in performances. So then, even after college, I started taking dance classes again and I started performing, and that also helped build my confidence. And now I actually organize cultural programs and help coordinate everything. I even choreograph dances for kids. So it has been a long journey, but it is possible. If I can do it, a shy kid who would not even speak up to the teacher, and getting to this point, I think anyone can do it.
That's very inspirational. I really like how you've been challenging yourself. You realize that this was holding you back from adding value, but also from growing and being the best version of yourself. Then you took it on as a challenge. Now, there you go, presenting in front of 300 people, which for some, it's probably the most scary thing that they would ever do in their entire life is present for an audience that large. It really shows that, yes, you can overcome a lot of that. And for you, you in a way gamified it because you challenged yourself to do it and took the steps towards in that direction. I relate to a couple of things that you shared. I was also very shy all throughout my childhood. And again, didn't want to talk to any or raise my hand, or even reading something in class was a nightmare. I would get read and mumble my words and get really anxious about it. But also dance. I also found some confidence in dance myself. It's great to hear other people like yourself who found confidence in dance, in your case, performance, which is even more significant. So you were practicing, you're challenging yourself with increasingly more difficult or bigger audiences or more intimidating audiences. Now you're saying that whenever you do have to do a presentation at work, does it not bother you in the same way? Or do you still have any anxiety after all of the work that you've done to develop that confidence?
Yeah, some of the anxiety is going to be there. Even if you look at people who present in front of thousands of people, even if you ask them, each of them they have to mentally prepare themselves. So the first thing is, of course, you have to be fully prepared. You have to know your material and you have to anticipate questions. So you have to do your homework. That's the basics. But once even having that, a lot of people, and I used to be in that place, we still don't feel comfortable. And even now, when I have to do a dance performance, I still have that little bit of that stage anxiety, or if I'm presenting in front of a lot of people or really important people, I still have that. I actually have been doing meditation for a long time, and one of the presentations that I have done in Grace Hopper was a workshop along with two other colleagues, which was how to get the glass to half full instead of half empty. So it's a lot of times it's about the mindset change. So how to actually control your emotions, how to navigate them, whether it's at work or in personal life. And and that's the reason I call myself a lifelong learner, is because this is not something you just do it once and then you're a pro at it. You have to keep working at it every time you learn something new. And communication in general is, I feel like, you can always keep improving upon it. I love to watch great leaders when they make speeches, how they are doing it, how they're able to inspire people like Martin Luther King, the famous speech that he gave, and just being able to inspire people is something I really admire, and I keep learning from these great leaders. So with mindfulness and the meditation techniques, it definitely helps me specifically, or anyone in general, to ground themselves, to make sure how do we separate ourselves from what we are feeling, how do we focus on what we are about to do, and then it helps reduce some of our mental anxiety, helps us focus, and also gives us that calm and composure, and makes us look more confident.
Those are great tips. I also look at some other speakers who I admire. I really like the style of Simon Sinek on how he speaks. I've listened to him speak a lot of times. At some point, I was playing it like a low volume in my headphone and trying to follow along out loud because pace, there's a certain style, a certain speed, a certain tone of delivery that's almost musical in how he delivers. And the same thing with Martin Luther King and so many others. I think that's a great way of seeing what works and also finding our own style to motivate others.
That's a really important part. Look at others, but then find your own style. You said it really well.
Yeah. And have you found your style? Right? From going from this shy person who didn't want to speak or be visible in any project or anything to now bringing attention to yourself. How does that feel? And how would you describe your own style?
Yeah, it took me a while to find my own style because I tried to imitate other people, and I would see or read tips that this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you're supposed to do. And then I would follow that. I even tried to do voice exercises to modulate my voice because speaking deeply is very impactful than speaking, I don't know, a woman. So I used to read all of these tips and then try to follow it, and it was not working. So I just tried to, I think eventually over the time, it helped me just practicing. So like I said, I used to practice in front of the mirror. Then later on, I started recording myself. And then because as human beings, we are our own worst self-critics, we like really nitpick on what we do. So when I record myself and when I see it, then I can tell, oh, that doesn't sound like me. Oh, I would never say that. So then I can actually make it more authentic. And I think, again, just being grounded and being proud of who I am and being comfortable with that has really helped me. So it's a lot of times when we try to imitate something or try to just, I always say, learn from others' mistake and learn from other successes, but also find your own rhythm because everyone's journey is different. Everyone is on their own path, and how someone got from point A to point B, or how someone is being visible and speaking up, it's for different reasons. For me, I had to find my reason. So now I'm really passionate about women in tech, about diversity and inclusion, about parenting, the ethics in tech and AI. So when I'm really passionate about, this is what I discovered about myself, that when I'm really passionate about myself, I can write about it, I can speak about it, to whether it's to one-on-one at a conversation in a party, or when I'm speaking to a group, like even when I feel something specific about a specific feature in a product, I can really speak about it from my heart and with all of the knowledge that I have. This is what has helped me. So the topics I'm passionate about and the reason that I do it, discovering my passions. And the second thing was, why do I want to do it? So I do it because I want to share what I have learned so that people like me, if I were to talk back to my college self, I would be able to give her tips. And I do it. Another big reason for me is I want to leave this world, a better place for the next generation, for my kids, because all of the things that I have learned the hard way, being being a woman in a software industry or technical industry, so that like when my daughter gets to that stage, wherever profession she is in, she doesn't have to say that, oh my God, like why is there is a difference? Why are we not getting equally paid? Why is there a difference? Why are we treated differently? So I had to learn those things, and I want to help the next generation, but also the people who are on the path early in their career, who want to be leaders or who want to grow ahead in their career. So whatever I can do whatever I can share. And even if it helps just one person in the whole world, I'm happy about it because I still help that one person and it's worth it.
Identifying our passions and our why is so key and so motivating. And like you said, it helped you be able to find the courage to speak up in those meetings and volunteer to go and talk in these events and conferences. And even filming yourself, that's very courageous because I went to Toastmasters for 2 years and nobody filmed themselves. And when I asked people why they weren't filming themselves, they said they couldn't look at themselves
Mhm.
making mistakes and being imperfect. But by the way, we were all there to be imperfect and improve because we were bad.
Mhm.
Like, so the fact that you started recording yourself, it sounds simple, but I've witnessed how hard it is for people. They don't do it because they're so focused on, oh my gosh, I look terrible. I sound terrible. I can't believe that's me. And you also said something else, which is getting used to your voice, getting used to hearing yourself when you're practicing in front of the mirror. And for a lot of us who don't speak a lot naturally, we're introverted, we're shy by nature. We don't hear ourselves that much, especially for an extended period of time. And it's strange. It is definitely strange. It's even stranger listening to a recording of our own voice. And it takes some time to get used to our own voice and hearing it out loud in the moment and hearing it later in recording. It's unpleasant in the I don't know if you felt like it was unpleasant at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when we used to have landlines and we remember those days. So when I used to get some call, they would always say, "Hey, can I talk to your mom or dad?" So I really sounded like a kid. So I had to work on myself to get used to that. And that's why I was trying to work on my voice and all that. But then I realized it's okay. As long as I'm comfortable with it, it's okay. And I just have to share my message. And if the message is good and if I'm speaking it authentically, then people will hear it.
So you shifted your focus from, oh, I got to change my voice here to sound more masculine, deeper, and all that, because you're soft spoken. You're soft spoken, just like me. We're soft spoken people. And so you shifted from trying to change your voice, which obviously is going to feel inauthentic, even if it works, to actually finding your passion and your why and speaking through your passion, being prepared, obviously, which then really comes through and that becomes more powerful in your messaging, in your influence, in your impact than how deep your voice is.
Yeah. And I have been told, even in interviews, oh, you're soft spoken, and I don't think it's a good fit. And that's okay because, again, I don't want to be in a place where I have to change myself to work there. And that's good information for me as well. So instead of feeling bad about it, yeah, this is who I am. I'm not going to change myself. I am soft spoken and I get work done. I don't have to drop F bombs or say bad words and be mean to people to get work done. You can get work done and you can get your message across in a nice way as well. So if there are some people who will not understand that, then that's okay because everyone is different. And then that was not a good match for me and that was not a good match for them.
That's a wholly different way of thinking about it. A lot of people would get really angry with that. But for you, it was like, oh, this is information. This is good to know. Better to know this before I sign up this for this offer and get on this job and then realize that people are not appreciating me for who I am. Right. So that was invaluable input for you as a way of filtering out the less suitable jobs for you. You're choosing in that
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, and I don't want to say like it doesn't hurt, of course, it does. But after you get over it, I always try to do a self retrospective and see what can I learn from it. And then I realized, yeah, I even if I had gotten that job and later I had realized that, so in a way it worked out because I don't want to be in a place like that.
Were there any other surprises like that that you had in interviews that gave you that insight that, oh, this is not a place I want to work in?
See, being a woman, it's a hard balance. So if you're assertive, you get being called, especially in a leadership position, you can be called, oh, you're too assertive. And when you're soft spoken, you're too soft spoken. We don't judge men like that. When a man is assertive, we call them, oh, that's confidence. And this is one of the reasons I share what I share. Like one of the talks I do is how to talk about your work, because it's not about a lot of times women just think that we do good work and then we get noticed and then we get ahead. No, that's not how it works. And I learned it the hard way. And it's people need to know what you have done. You have to be able to talk about your work, and you have to again change your mindset. It's not about bragging. And that's another word women get when we're talking about work, or like we're talking about what we have accomplished. Sometimes it can come across as bragging. So it's a fine balance, especially being a woman. But the mindset is that you want to educate people on what you have been working on, because they may not remember. So it is educate them. What value do you bring? What have you done? And why, just keep reminding them why you're a valuable employee. I've had instances where I have called like completely the opposite, and that's a good reminder that people will perceive what they want to perceive, and it's not up to me to change their minds. I can do like the only person that's in my control is me. So how I react to those situations, how I respond to those situations is up to me. Other person's reaction I cannot control, and that's why I should not waste my energy on that. So if there is that's the philosophy I follow, that if there is something for me to learn, I'll learn it and then I'll move on. If there is something that the other person needs to know, I will still relay that message in a respectful manner. But again, how they perceive it is not up to me.
Oh, there's a lot to unpack there. It's really important because women, especially, and empaths and introverts and sensitive people tend to take responsibility for how other people interpret and feel based on what we said. Right. So yeah, you already used the word respectful. So you know that you're speaking respectfully, yet a lot of people will not speak up and communicate sometimes hard messages in fear that it's going to hurt people's feelings, and they don't want to be the responsible for other people's feelings being hurt. And what you said is you'll say what you need to say respectfully, and then you'll move on. And I believe in that. I believe in that. I believe it's in us knowing what we're saying, what we need to say, saying it and doing so in the most, and you talk about it all the time, being kind in a respectful and kind way, but we can't control how people necessarily respond to it in the moment. Plus, they can look upset in the moment, but then be deeply grateful a few months later or a year later.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of time we make up the stories in our head. So if someone were to tell me, oh my God, that dress completely does not look good on you. And let's say I'm going to a party and I don't have time to change. And one of my friends just said that to me, oh my God, that dress does not look good on you. It's up to me how I respond to that. I could be like totally mad at her. Oh my God, you're telling me this now? Could you have told me this earlier when we discussed what we were going to wear? But I don't have time. So it doesn't give me any, like, it doesn't help me. So I can be mad at her and I can go to the party and keep thinking about, oh my God, this dress does not look good on me. And I would be not paying attention to the people over there, to the conversations. I will not be listening to it. So it's all in my head. She said that one comment and she moved on. And maybe it's your sister, younger sibling, right? They're not even there. And you still have this narrative going on in your head. Another example is, let's say it wasn't even that descriptive. If someone had said to me, you're wearing that dress, that's it. And it was a brief thing. And then maybe the conversation got changed. And that I can take it a lot of ways, and a lot of us do. We usually go to the most negative extreme that, oh my God, this dress is really bad. She didn't even say the word bad. It's the narrative in our head. And again, they just said that and they moved on, but we are still reliving that in our head again and again. Or she could have even meant that, oh, you're wearing that dress, meaning, oh, it looked good on you last time. And then you're wearing that again. Just because someone said that, again, we'll go to the negative extreme. So it's a lot about just being comfortable with who you are. And yeah, the comment in the moment, I'm not gonna deny that, yeah, it's gonna affect me. That, oh my God, I'm wearing this dress to this party and it's not gonna be a good thing. But then I have to get over it. Maybe before I enter the door, it is what it is. I'm just gonna have a good time. And maybe it will make even a fun story if everyone is like better dressed than me or worse dressed than me or whatever. But I'm just gonna have fun. So at least that gives me, then I'm not tied in that my mental story. And I can, it's again being in the present, being in the now. I like whatever is in my control, I can control it. Can I go back and change? No, I don't have time. Can I enjoy the party regardless of what I'm wearing? Yeah, I can do that. And maybe I'll regret about it later. Yeah, we'll worry about that when we cross that bridge. So it's like a lot of self-talk in your own head.
Yeah, it seems like you've mastered how to talk yourself out of rumination or unhelpful worries that you can't control. But also in that example, I love the dress example. A lot of us can relate to that. It's a great control, non-control situation. But the fact is, the attitude that you show up at that party is going to really either reinforce the fact that maybe the dress didn't look great. Like if you start to shut down and be shy and try to hide yourself and not talk to people because you feel like people don't think you're dressed in a certain way, that's going to affect perception way more than if you show up smiling with a great attitude, engaging with people, having a great time. No one's even going to remember what you were dressing because of how you show up. And I also love what you said about educating people on what you are working on. And you also said, keep reminding them that you're valuable employees. So those are two parts. One is it's not bragging, it's educating people. Because if we don't educate people, how are they going to know? Yes. And the second part that you said is keep reminding them because they will forget. And if you don't keep reminding them, then it's not going to work. Someone else is going to keep reminding them. And then who's going to get the opportunity, the promotion? Do you have an example of how you educate people on the good work that you're doing? What's the sentence structure, or just give an example of what that would look like in a non-bragging way?
Yes, one of the things I tell all my mentees and even my team members is keep an ongoing log of what you're accomplishing, at least weekly, if not daily. And it can seem, and it's just a reminder for yourself, to yourself, this is what I have done. And then when you have to talk about it, then when you're one-on-ones or in your performance review, then you have that list already. And when you talk about some, excuse me, it's in a non-bragging way, it can sound like, so a lot of time what people do is when they, so I'll do the three extremes, right? So when they're just talking about the project and they just assume their manager or their manager's manager or their peers, they already know about that project and what it brings. Yeah, I worked on that project, Project Olympics, and I worked on this feature on the login, and we were able to get the performance really up. So as a manager, if I was listening to that, tells me nothing. Yeah, a lot of people worked on Project Olympics and a lot of people worked on the performance. Like I don't know what you contributed to it. And the other extreme, the bragging extreme, would be that, oh yeah, I worked on the Project Olympics and I helped bring in all of this revenue. And even Peter, who is working with the CEO, he even commented how good my work was, and I was able to, so it's a lot of I instead of the team. So that's where it can get into bragging. So how do you speak about it? Again, it has to be your style, your voice, but think about it. If you're whoever you're talking to, think about your audience. If your manager or your manager's manager or your peer, or you run into someone in the elevator and you have to talk about this project, they don't know what it is. Or even if they do, it was a long time ago. So think about it. Yeah, I worked on the Project Olympics, which was really crucial to our company because our next round of funding depended on getting this feature set out the door. And we had two big customers who were our beta customers who were waiting on these features. So I worked with my team of 4 people. And as a tech lead in that team, I was able to design the architecture and come across the potential problems that may have come up. And we were able to fine tune that and get that to a good design and then execute it on that strategy. And then we were able to deliver it on time. So talk about the facts, talk about it in such a way, but also talk about how you contributed to it. It's not a lot of I. There's the team in it also, but I worked with a team of 4 people. But as a tech lead, I worked on the system architecture design diagram or whatever it is, how you contributed to it. And always think about so what. So you worked on it, so what? So that so what will give you the rest of the answer. Then it will tell you what impact you had. So the value that you bring, why was this project important? Why working on this system architecture was important? Because so what? Because I was able to anticipate some of the potential bottlenecks, and we were able to uncover those in the design stage. So things like that. And thus we were able to, and if you can even get to some metrics, where if I'm in the tech industry, so a lot of my examples will be from that environment. But if you can, as an engineer, if you can get to some of the metrics from the product, why was this feature set important? Who were the big customers? What was the revenue that this brought in? And then just adding that will just create a lot more impact than, yeah, I worked on Project Olympics in the last 6 months. It doesn't tell me much. And then the CEO was like so happy about that we delivered it. Also bragging doesn't tell me much. But I worked as a team lead of this team. I worked on the design architecture. I was able to uncover bottlenecks early in the stage, thus saving time and money. And if you can convert that into metrics, that's even more impactful.
Brilliant examples. Brilliant. A very nice distinction between the three. And that last example is very detailed. The so what was very clear. I think you mentioned the metric, good balance between I and we, really beautiful. So I think that's a good example for our listener here on how to brag. You took up space. It took up way more time estate than the others, but that's because you were precise.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's okay to take up space. It's okay to take you always like another thing I used to do is I still talk fast, but I always felt like, oh, the other person's time is just way more important and I need to just wrap things up. So I would be talking really fast or I would be just summarizing things and not going into details, but it's okay. And if you feel like you're losing your audience or the person you're talking to, you can always ask, do you want me to go on a higher level or do you want me to dig into details? But it's okay to take up that space and be comfortable with it.
That's a great tip there. If uncomfortable, because sometimes we do have a tendency, like you said, to think that other people's time is so valuable and just make assumptions around, oh, they need to leave. I'm not important. What I have to say is not important. I need to shorten this so that they can leave. And then you're so brief that they have no idea what you're talking about. So that's a great way of doing it, is just ask them if they want to hear in a higher level of detail, lower level of detail, how much time they have for that. Let's go to some hard conversations that you felt proud of.
So yeah, one of my eye opener has been actually a pleasant surprise. And this was around the time my daughter was born, my first child. And it's so I had my maternity leave, and the maternity leave was for about 3 months, and I had to come back to work. And this was again way before when we were all working remote and all that. This was a few years ago. My daughter would not drink from a bottle. We tried, like in the last few weeks, I tried everything. I read up every article I could find on internet. I tried all the different bottles. I tried all the different bottle nipples that you could buy. I tried all the advice from doctors, from friends, from neighbors, from anyone. Let her cry, don't give in, this and that. But she just would not. She would not take a bottle. And she was too young to start on solids. So I had no choice. And I was like very confused on what to do. And my commute was really long at that time. And as I was ready to come back, and some of my friends, and when they would come to see the baby, they would ask about when are you going back to work and all that. And I say, I don't know what to do. It's really hard. She would not, and I cannot have even a 4 to 5 hour gap that she would not drink anything. The only thing that was working was like we were feeding her with a spoon, and my mother-in-law was there helping with us, but it would take forever. And a little baby drinking through a spoon. And she said, have you talked to your manager about it? I'm like, no, but I'm expected back at work. I don't know what to do. And she's just talk to him and see if you can work from home for a little bit longer, or if you can extend your leave. So I said, I didn't think about that. Why did I not think about that? Then I called my manager. I had a talk with him and I explained to him, and he was a man, by the way, that he like this is, and he did not have kids at the time. So to just for me to explain this to him, that she's not taking the bottle, and it's, even if I were to pump, our work provided the rooms and all those lactation rooms, but for me to she would not take the bottle. So it's not about just doing the pumping. It's actually she needs to feed from me. And is it okay if I work from home for another 3 months till she's able to take up semi-solids? Because at 6 months, we were going to introduce her to that. And he's, yeah, that's fine. Just make sure you let your team know. And he was totally okay with it. He fully supported me. And that was like a really like eye opener and a surprise, that ask, don't just assume. And this is what I tell my team members, that people who report to me, that I'm not a mind reader. So if you have anything, that if I said something that did not sit right with you, or if you are curious about something, just ask, because I wish I had that. Actually, I don't wish I had that superpower, but like no one is. And that was a learning experience for me, because no one is a mind reader and you have to ask. So now anytime I'm in a situation like that, I ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? Because if I don't ask that question, I'm still at the same place as I was before. So I have actually lost nothing, right? So if my manager had said no, I was still at the same position, that, yeah, you cannot work from home. So I still would have to figure it out. But by my asking, I had that chance. So in situations like this, it doesn't hurt to ask. So just ask. And if they say no, but at least you tried. So that's been a lot of situations when I'm sometimes afraid to say things. And then I just have to have this conversation in my head, that, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Is this question going to make things any worse? No, then might as well ask. There is at least a 0.1% chance that this can work.
I love I'm not a mind reader. That's really great. And that's an interesting situation because you're right. Like you actually didn't even have much of an option there if you wanted to still stay in that company. You had to say something. And it's interesting that at the time you were confused to the point where you weren't sure because it's uncomfortable to have that conversation with a male manager without kids. Very uncomfortable. And you had to get into a little bit of the details as well to explain what was going on. Yet it was an easy yes. And right, there was no impediment there. There wasn't even any negotiation that had to happen.
Yeah.
It was a straight on yes. There were no objections. And like you said, you gave yourself that chance. I'm sure it meant the world to you.
Of course, yeah.
To be able to have those 3 months. And it also meant that you valued that leader a lot more after you had that conversation and he understood you.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it improved the relationship there as well. And then when you did come back, you were able to come back without resentment, without being upset about people in the situation. Because when we don't get what we want and because we don't ask, we get resentful. So I love what you did there and the lesson that you derived from it and how you tell your team members that you're not a mind reader.
Yeah. And that actually goes in our personal life as well. A lot of times we assume people know things, especially our spouses, they don't. So it's okay to remind themselves.
That's true. That is so true. So let me just share a quote that I saw that you believe in, which is, "I am a firm believer that we can be strong and kind at the same time. We can work together on solutions rather than working against each other." So tell me more about that strong and kind philosophy.
Yeah, so like I said, I've been observing people and like I pick up things like what things they're doing well, what they're not doing well. And I've seen leaders, I've had leaders who are loud and they want it their way. They don't listen to people and they want the work done, but also they're belittling people. And I've seen people like even like in big companies, I won't name names, but even like saying bad words and not caring who else is around. And again, it goes to what is in your control, right? Is making someone feel small actually going to get the work done? No, it's actually going to demotivate them. It won't help them at all. So and I have also observed leaders and including the manager who supported me, like how they invest in people because he invested in me and he knew I was already a good worker. And as you mentioned, that when I came back super motivated, and even when I was working from home around, again, it was the time when remote work was not a thing. So even when I was working from home, I was making sure that I'm actually giving my more than 100% and making sure that I'm they can rely on me, they can trust me, they can count on me, and I'm getting things done. And when I came back super motivated, I took on extra projects. And so I observe people, what they do well, what they don't do well, and especially in leadership. So I'm not going to be a leader like that. I'm going to be and respecting people is not just in workplace. It could be any place. It could be in a supermarket. It could be when you can be rude to the supermarket cashier or you can be nice to them. Let's say they made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. You don't have to yell at them. You don't have to like try to understand. Maybe they have put in long hours. Who knows what else is going through their mind? So just be human. So to me, being respectful and kind is just being human. And that goes in everything that I do. So when I'm at work, and again, I'm a servant leader. So I'm there to make sure my team is successful, my team members get what they need, and because they're doing the work. So whatever I can do to make them successful, I do that. And when things don't get done, it's not that I cannot, I'll still deliver the difficult message, but I'll do it kindly and respectfully. And when a mistake does get made, for example, there's a customer issue. Okay, there is an issue. Instead of like, how did it happen? Let's fix it. Let's work on the solutions together. And then later, what can we learn from it? How did it happen? Let's work on it later. Think about that later, but let's fix it right now. It happened. We recognize it. Let's move forward. But then after it's fixed, how can we make sure? What can we learn from it? It's a learning exercise for all of us because we were not allowed to make mistakes as a baby, you crawl when you're learning to walk, how many times you fall down. If your parents had just said that, no, that's not how you do it, on the very first time that you just fell, like how long would it take you? It would just take you a really long time. Eventually you'll still get it done, but it's that kind of, okay, yeah, you fell down and then come on, try again, you can do it. So it's that kind of attitude you need to have, that yeah, this happened, so that we can learn from the mistake so it doesn't happen again, but we need to keep moving forward. So that's why I always believe that you can be kind and you can be assertive. It's not one or the other, and you can still do things with a smile. You don't have to be serious all the time. We only have one life, and it's okay to be human, and it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable. Tell people around you even the mistakes that you have made. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and my kids remind me how many mistakes I made. So every one of us makes mistakes, but just recognizing that all of us are human, and we're in this together. Instead of working against each other, let's work with each other.
Yes, we can be both kind and assertive. I like your thoughts on we're human, let's be human, let's acknowledge that we're human. And one of the things that you were sharing, how you've noticed some leaders that were on the belittling or loud way of being and also saying bad words. I remember in many occasions with people who were more senior than me, you probably will relate to this. Only woman in the room, most other guys, all more senior. And so many times they would turn to me and say, Ivna, close your ears, or we're going to say something, and then, or excuse our French. And then they would go on to say sexist things about women or just profanity language. And it was weird. I wouldn't expect that. But you're right. There are different types of leaders out there. And I really like the way that you see it. You speak, you have the important conversations, you support your team, and at the same time, when you do have need to have an important conversation, it's kind and respectful. So I appreciate you sharing that with us today. Any last thoughts, Mamta?
I just want to say that be proud of who you are. And it's a lot of times we think about what can we improve about ourselves, what extra things we can do. But think about all the things you already are doing and have been doing and how much you have already done, and be proud of yourself. A lot of times we don't take time we just keep waiting for someone else to tell us that we did a good job or we did this. So a lot of times we think that other people need to come and tell us what a good job that I did, but just say that yourself. Yeah, you did good today. That was a good meeting. Have a conversation instead of the self-critical voice in your head that always says the things that you don't do well. Think about the things that you do well, and you have to be intentional about, because the negative self-talk will keep going on in your head, but the positive self-talk needs to be intentional. So talk to yourself that, yeah, that was a good comment that you made. That was a good question. And then keep doing that and it'll keep building the confidence. One last thing I want to say is be your own best friend. So a lot of times we are just our own worst critics, but be your own best friend.
Those are beautiful, uplifting closing remarks. And this is from someone who has been very shy, who struggled to speak up, who challenged herself to speak up a lot more and find her own voice in how she does it, as well as learning how to ask for what you want and now teaching your team how to do so as well, and realizing that there are stories and there's reality, and being able to discern the two and educate others about your work and what you do, plus making sure that you're kind and respectful and assertive at the same time. Wonderful learnings. Thank you so much, Mamta, for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you so much, Ivna. I really enjoyed our conversation.